A 22-year-old nursing student on her regular morning jog disappeared after crossing paths with an unknown, suspicious hooded figure. Thankfully, law enforcement caught more than one lucky break in this case early on, though as the story unfolded and more details came to light, outrage only grew over this entirely preventable and horrific crime. Hi there, I'm Kevin and welcome to Just Thought Lounge. Today's case is a controversial one, but not because its facts are in dispute, but rather because this case has come to represent greater and more complicated concerns. The amount of evidence uncovered by investigators has allowed us to piece together a detailed picture of how this murder took place. The only real question left is, what next? From family grief to presidential politics, the breadth of this case is massive. Let's take a look. "22-year-old Laken Riley loved to run. 3 to 6 times a week, Laken would jog with her friend Connolly, who was one of her 3 roommates. In May 2023, Laken transferred from the University of Georgia in Athens to the nursing program at the Augusta Medical College. Her dream was to become a pediatric nurse. Laken also really loved children. At 9:03 a.m. on February 22, 2024, Laken left her home near campus to jog through the intramural fields. That morning, she was running alone. The area consists of a large park with soccer fields, tennis courts, trails, and a lake. It was a popular location for student joggers and other outdoor activities. 2 minutes into her run, cameras captured Laken going south on Millage Avenue Extension. She held her cell phone in her left hand, 2 white AirPods visible in her ears. Laken often listened to music or called her mother for a chat while she jogged. The phone call that Laken placed that morning, however, was not to her mother. 6 minutes after she passed by the bus stop, heading east on the trails towards the train tracks, Laken stopped dead in her path. Her Garmin smartwatch recorded the exact moment when she went from fluid movement to a standstill. Only a moment later, the SOS function on her cell phone was activated. The call went to 911.
Clark County 911. Hello, this is Clark County 911. Hello, Clark County 911. Can anyone hear me?
There is a brief muffled voice captured in the background of the call, then scuffling noises, followed by 4 slightly muffled thuds. The call lasted only a minute before the cell phone disconnected. Subsequent calls back to her number by the emergency operator went unanswered. Connolly was Laken's regular running partner. That day, she was in classes for most of the morning. At around 11:15 a.m., she checked her phone and found that she had multiple messages and missed calls. Fellow roommate Lily had messaged about Laken. Had she heard from her? A voicemail from Laken's younger sister, Lauren, expressed similar concerns. There was some delay and confusion over their inability to reach Laken because the cellular provider, AT&T, experienced a service outage that morning. This impacted 2 of the women's devices, but not Laken's. By 11 a.m., they were certain that regardless of the issue, she should have been responding to their texts and calls. Lily had returned to the house and found that Laken had not returned from her morning run. Using the shared location feature on her phone, she was able to deduce that Laken's phone was in the forest near to the intramural fields. It had not moved from that location for hours. The women's 4th roommate, Sophia, returning from taking an exam, joined Lily and her dog, Champ. They set out along the path Laken would have taken towards the woodland. Following the location on their phones, Lily and Sophia walked into the leaves and brush just off of one of the main trails. There, Champ discovered a single white AirPod amongst the leaves. Recognizing that it was almost certainly Laken's, they called 911.
Hi, we're calling because our roommate went out for a run at 9. She usually runs through Lake Herrick behind grad housing, and we haven't heard from her. And we all just got service back, so we don't think it has anything to do with the outage. We went to go look to where her last location was, and all we found was an AirPod.
Okay, have you tried calling her since she just got service back?
Her family doesn't have AT&T, so the one with the power outage, so they've had service the whole time, and her calls have been ringing through. We're just not getting answers.
What's your name?
My name's Sophia Madonna.
And what's your friend's name?
Her name's Laken Riley.
Sergeant Kenneth Maxwell of the University of Georgia Police Department took a screenshot of Laken's phone location, distributed that photo to his colleagues alongside a photo of the young nursing student, and launched a search of the intramural fields. He began following the trails towards the location where her phone had last pinged. At just before 12:30, Sergeant Maxwell made a devastating discovery.
This is the university. I found it. Ma'am. Oh! I need EMS immediately to the location where the phone pinged.
Laken Riley was found on the ground under a large tree. She was partially concealed with leaves and other brush. Medical assistance was rendered immediately. EMS arrived on scene and also tried in vain to revive her. It was too late for their efforts, however. Laken had sustained visible blunt force trauma to the left side of her head.
On February 22nd, 2024, at approximately 12:07 p.m., the University of Georgia Police Department received a call from an individual concerned for a friend who had gone jogging at the intramural fields. Our officers responded to that area and immediately began a search of the area to attempt to locate the individual. Officers located the individuals in the area behind Lake Herrick at approximately 12:38. The individual was unconscious and not breathing and had visible injuries. Officers immediately began rendering medical aid. Emergency medical responders determined that the individual was deceased upon their arrival.
Laken Riley was found 64 feet from the nearest trail. The leaves covering the ground had been disturbed in the area. 2 rocks were found nearby with visible blood on them. Testing later confirmed that this was Laken's. One or both were thought to have been used as part of the attack. Laken's cell phone was also eventually located under a different tree a few hours later. It was a notable distance from where her body was found. Had authorities not already been aware that it had pinged in that area, they were unlikely to have found it. On the screen of the device was a clear fingerprint. Testing would determine that it was from a left thumb, and it was not Laken's. Her autopsy suggested that she may not have died exclusively from her head injuries, but that she had also experienced some form of asphyxiation. It had been a brutal attack. The smartwatch data showed that she had remained on the trail for 4 minutes following her abrupt stop. The brief 911 call took place during that time. After, she moved over 60 feet into the woodland. She could have been dragged to that location or forced into the forest during a struggle. The watch still registered a heartbeat at 9:28 a.m., 17 minutes after she had ceased running. When Sergeant Maxwell came upon her, Laken's clothing was in a state of disarray, and her top half was exposed. Investigators surmised that her attacker had intended rape, but this had not occurred. With little to go on at that early stage, law enforcement began combing the area for further clues. They cordoned off the trails near to the lake and spoke with everyone coming through. They gathered camera footage of the surrounding buildings, and they sorted through garbage bins and dumpsters.
Rest assured that the University of Georgia Police, in cooperation, well, you can all see, with Athens Clarke County Police and the Georgia Bureau of Investigation are continuing to work around the clock to resolve this crime and to bring anyone involved with it to justice.
Amongst the bins searched was a large blue recycling bin located at the far end of a parking lot between a handful of apartment buildings. The complex was within a few hundred yards of the trails and intramural space used by the university. When police peered into the recycling bin, they spotted a dark-colored jacket, crumpled and discarded recently on top of the other rubbish. Visible on the jacket was blood, as well as several long brown-colored hairs which had become twisted and attached to one of the jacket's buttons.
Oh, shit. Yeah. There's hair on the buttons, ripped up sleeves.
Testing of the blood returned a match to Laken Riley. There was a total of 29 hairs pulled from the jacket, which were also consistent with being Laken's. Many of these strands showed signs of having been forcibly torn directly from the scalp. In a stroke of luck for investigators, a neighboring apartment unit's doorbell camera looked out directly upon the recycling bin where the jacket had been found. On this footage, police believed they had captured Laken's killer. At 9:44 a.m. on the morning Laken died, only 15 minutes after her heart had stopped beating, a male figure sauntered towards the blue bin. He removed the Adidas cap from his head, briefly examined it, then put it back on. The man tossed the bloody jacket into the bin and proceeded to walk along the side of the apartment building. In the bushes, he paused to discard other items. In those bushes, police found 3 black disposable kitchen gloves. One had a visible tear. This resulted in a hole over the top of the thumb. Laken Riley's blood was also on these gloves. At just before 8:30 a.m. the day following the murder, University of Georgia police got their next huge break in the case. Outside of the apartment complex where the jacket and gloves had been discovered, they spotted a man wearing a black Adidas cap, identical to the one worn by the suspected killer. That man was Diego Ibarra, a Venezuelan national and a resident of the apartment complex. He presented officers with a fake green card. Diego, they learned, lived with roommates, his 2 brothers, Argenis Ibarra, or Manny, and Jose Ibarra, whom they sometimes called Victor. There was one woman in the household, Rosebelly Flores Bello. The group were living in the United States illegally, but had managed to make money from a handful of part-time jobs, mainly at local restaurants. Diego had also managed to secure a food service role at the university. It is Jose Ibarra, or Victor, emerging from his bed who caught the attention of the university police. As the group gathered outside, officers focused in on the 26-year-old. Jose had visible scratches on his arms, on his hands, and on the back of his neck. When his shirt was later removed, he had similar injuries on his back. When Jose was asked to explain why his knuckles were red, he explained simply that his hands were cold. But when questioned about the many recent scratches, he feigns ignorance, claiming that despite the injuries being very noticeable, they are not there. He offered the corporal no explanation.
What happened there? What happened there?
Throughout the exchange with officers, the group was described as relaxed, smoking cigarettes, and joking around. Jose was asked to lift the hair from his head so that the officers could examine his entire face. At this point, Jose does something remarkable and admits that he usually wears a hat. He gestures towards his brother Diego by way of explanation. He often wears a hat just like the Adidas one, he said, that his brother had on that morning. After a warrant was obtained for the apartment, officers found several black disposable gloves in the drawer of the kitchen, matching the blood-stained ones discarded in the bushes. At the station, both Diego Ibarra and Rosebelly Flores identified Jose Ibarra as the man in the dumpster video. They also confirmed that the day prior, he had been wearing his brother's Adidas hat. This was further verified by photos pulled from Jose's cell phone. At 4:30 a.m. and then again at 5:37 a.m., Jose snapped selfies of himself in the clothing he was still wearing on the dumpster video. He had posted these selfies online. Most notably, they showed him dressed in the black Adidas hat and the dark jacket. Both had tested positive for Laken Riley's blood. 2 neighboring apartment doorbell cameras also captured Jose's movement the night before and the day of the murder. Jose was dressed in the same clothing the night before, the jacket and the hat. He changed only after the murder had taken place. Cameras captured him at 10:30 a.m. the next day, appearing to dispose of additional items. At that time, he walked towards another one of the complex's dumpsters. 3 minutes later, he returned, the plastic bag no longer in his hands. Investigators were able to confirm that the dumpster was emptied during regular collection time, 45 minutes after Jose walked towards it with the plastic bag. The patterned shirt that Jose wore under the jacket was not found in any dumpster, nor was it recovered inside the apartment. This was also true of the small backpack or sling bag that he was seen wearing on camera. Investigators assumed that these 2 items were disposed of at 10:30 a.m. in the second dumpster at the apartment complex. The case against Jose Ibarra was a strong one. Even more so after the forensic experts with the GBI found that his left thumbprint was a match to the one on Laken Riley's cell phone. DNA from underneath Laken's right fingernails matched to Jose Ibarra as well, and explained the many scratches he had so recently acquired. Jose Ibarra had attacked and brutally killed Laken Riley.
We are obtaining arrest warrants for Jose Antonio Ibarra, 26 years of age. He lives here in Athens, but is not a U.S. citizen. At this time, the investigation suggests that they had no relationship. He did not know her at all. I think this was a crime of opportunity where he saw an individual and bad things happen.
As investigators pieced together his motive and built a rock-solid case, public outcry began almost immediately, and only intensified as soon as Jose's background and his criminal history came to light. Jose and his wife Laken Franco crossed the U.S.-Mexican border into El Paso in September 2022. He was arrested and then released into the country on parole. At that time, Venezuelans had protected status, which allows them to stay in the United States for a time. Due to political unrest, it could be unsafe for them to return home. It would take years for Jose's asylum claim to be properly scrutinized. In the meantime, he and his brothers were getting into trouble. In the wake of his arrest for murder, it was revealed that there were at least 2 instances in the previous 2 years in which Jose Ibarra could have been placed into custody, but was not. Jose and Laken first went to New York State. There, in September 2023, he was charged with acting in a manner to injure a child, as well as a motor vehicle license violation. In the course of doing food deliveries, Jose was driving a moped around with his 5-year-old child, and neither wore helmets. New York officials then released him before a detainer could be issued, according to immigration officials. While in New York, Jose had been in contact with his brother Diego, who had managed to secure the apartment in Athens, Georgia. Diego told Jose that there was work to be had in Athens. In October of that year, Jose and Rosebelly, whom he had met in Queens, requested a humanitarian flight to Georgia and joined Diego and Manny there. Shortly after arriving, Diego and Jose were arrested for shoplifting at Walmart. This was the second opportunity since the time of their release from the border in which Jose could have been held by law enforcement. However, at that time, there was no process in place to check immigration status until a formal booking took place, and the brothers were never formally charged. They received a citation and were again released. In a presidential election year, the circumstances and history of Laken's accused killer made the case a hot-button topic, which permeated mainstream media, online commentary, as well as state and national politics. Freshman conservative Republican Representative Mike Collins of Georgia introduced new legislation that would require the detention of any immigrant who committed burglary or theft. It is called the Laken Riley Act. Critics of the proposed legislation point out that the language it uses is problematic.
This was an act committed by an individual, not a community of people. When we want to respond quickly to something, we have to make sure that we're not just reacting, but that the resources are there to help, that there's people are paying close attention to make sure that they actually are solving a problem that needs to be solved.
Supporters argue that had this law been in place, Laken Riley's killer would not have been free to brutally attack and murder her. The bill overwhelmingly passed the House in March 2024.
We dropped that bill on a Friday, rammed it through Rules Committee on a Tuesday, voted on Thursday, before President Biden got up there ranting and raving with his confused stump speech. Folks, y'all realize we passed that with even 37 Democrats helping us. They even realize how damn bad that border is down there.
The case became a kind of microcosm for the debate over immigration, highlighted in the State of the Union and referenced regularly by both major parties throughout the presidential campaign season. This notoriety was not especially well received by grieving family members.
1 week ago, a beautiful 22-year-old nursing student from Georgia was barbarically attacked, almost unrecognizable, while she was out on her morning run. She was doing keep herself in shape. She was a beautiful young woman. She was a great person, best nursing student there was. He was an illegal migrant, and he shouldn't have been in our country, and he never would have been under the Trump policy.
Former President Trump said he met with Laken Riley's family backstage and says he promises to fight for justice for her and her family.
Laken Riley, an innocent young woman who was killed by an illegal. That's right. But how many of thousands of people being killed by illegals? To her parents, I say, my heart goes out to you, having lost children myself. I understand.
I feel like she's being used somewhat politically.
How do you feel about that?
It makes me angry. She was much better than that. She should be raised up for the person that she is. You know, you second guess everything. And, you know, you wish there was more security cameras, more security where she was running. I wish she was running with friends. She decided not to run with friends that day. She usually does. I wish I could have been there to protect her. Wish it would have been me.
Jose Ibarra was due to stand trial in November 2024. He faced charges of malice and felony murder, aggravated assault and battery for the brutality of the attack, false imprisonment and kidnapping for forcing Laken from the trail into the woods, hindering a 911 call, as well as assault with intent to rape, and peeping Tom. 10 counts in total. It was on these last charges that the evidence revealed the 26-year-old's state of mind that morning. Beginning around 6:50 a.m. on the day of the murder, a suspicious person was captured slinking around in dark clothing and carrying a white cup near the bus stop area, which meets a pathway that leads to the back of Jose's apartment complex. Images show a similar hoodie-style jacket, sling bag, hat, and black gloves that Jose was known to have been wearing. The video showed the person going to the door of an apartment 6 times before 8 a.m. Twice, the man attempted to fully open the door. That apartment's resident, a young female graduate student, heard noises as she got herself ready inside. While in the shower, she heard the front door. When she called out, the suspicious figure ducked down to avoid being seen. She called 911 immediately.
I was in the shower and then I heard some noises and I just trying to someone was shouting a big horn. Someone was trying to open the door and then I said excuse me and then they just ran away and then now they're trying to look through my window.
When officers responded to the building, the stalker could not be located. Camera footage showed him carrying around and drinking from a white cup. A similar cup was discovered sitting just outside the tree line of the forest where Laken's body was found. Its location was almost exactly halfway between the crime scene and the grad student's apartment. DNA testing of the cup returned a match to Jose Ibarra. The cup had contained alcohol.
On February 22nd, Jose Ibarra put on a black hat, a hoodie-style jacket, and some black kitchen-style disposable gloves. And he went hunting for females on the University of Georgia's campus.
Clark County had chosen to bring in a special prosecutor, Sheila Ross, to prosecute the case. Ross argued an impassioned, detailed, and damning case against Jose Ibarra. The argument was made only to Athens-Clarke County Superior Court Judge H. Patrick Haggard. Jose waived his right to a jury trial, perhaps seeking to avoid the issue of bias and notoriety that were likely to arise in such a high-profile case. His defense team attempted to deflect some pieces of evidence, arguing that the man in the dumpster video could have been his brother, Diego. FBI Special Agent James Burney told the court that he received the location data from Jose's cell phone, alongside Laken's phone and her watch data. With this, he was able to piece together a comprehensive map of their movements. GPS data from the watch placed Laken in the forest where she was later found. Pings between Jose's phone and cell towers, coupled with the fact that his phone was not making any Wi-Fi connections at the time of the murder, also placed him in the woods. His defense team proved that on days prior to the murder, other individuals, including his brother Diego, had used Jose's cell phone. But there was no indication that anyone other than him had been in possession of it on February 22nd. Diego Ibarra was also working a shift at the University of Georgia's dining hall on the day of the murder. Nor was there any physical evidence placing Diego in the woods with Laken, only Jose's DNA under her fingernails and his thumbprint on her phone. Jose Ibarra showed little to no emotion over 3 days of testimony. He looked on stoically as an interpreter relayed to him the case that was being presented. Laken's 3 roommates who had searched for her frantically that morning, Connolly, Lily, and Sophia, each took the stand. Jose stared into space as the 911 call placed from Laken's cell phone was played aloud to the court. Only he knew exactly what had taken place during that call. He showed no reaction when Sergeant Maxwell's body camera footage revealed the horrific moments that followed his discovery of Laken in the woods. Many of her friends and family chose to leave the courtroom before this footage was played. The video evidence was extensive. So too were the DNA results, which left no ambiguity as to who was responsible.
There is no way out for him. The evidence in this case has been overwhelming. And the evidence in this case has spoken loud and clear that he is Laken Riley's killer and that he killed her because she would not let him rape her. And look no further. You have to look no further to his actions 73 minutes before he encountered her on the trail to know what he was up to that day. And so not only does the physical evidence identify him, the video evidence identifies him. His own brother identifies him. His roommate, Rosebelly, identifies him. The people who he was living with condemn him. But his digital evidence of posting selfies of himself wearing what is basically his rapist gear an hour before he leaves his house, that condemns him. He has condemned himself.
Judge Haggard took a 20-minute break before returning to render his verdict.
I'll now announce the verdict. In the state of Georgia versus Jose Antonio Ibarra, case SU 24CR0323, count 1, malice murder. I find the defendant guilty. Count 2, felony murder. I find the defendant guilty. Count 3, felony murder. I find the defendant guilty. Count 4, felony murder. I find the defendant guilty. Count 5, kidnapping with bodily...
Jose Ibarra was found guilty on all counts.
Count 6, aggravated assault with intent to rape.
Allison Phillips, Laken's mother, her stepfather, John Phillips, sister Lauren, and her father, Jason Riley, all spoke during the sentencing phase of the trial, as did many of her close friends. They conveyed both their heartache over her loss, as well as the beautiful person that Laken had been, inside and out. The big heart that led her to pursue a career in nursing also made Laken a cherished friend to many. She was deeply involved in her church. She was also a best friend and role model to her younger sister.
I think about how my sister saw exactly what was coming and had no way of preventing it. I think about how scared she must have been and how that man is the only one to truly witness that scene. I'm not sure why he did this to my Laken, and I know I will never understand. I've waited for him to have a reason, but as the details of this case have unfolded, I realize I'll never get any peace or closure. What Jose Ibarra did to my sister is almost unbearable to listen to. I am completely disgusted having to even look and be in the same room as him. That predator is inhumane and is the epitome of evil. Jose Antonio Ibarra has completely and utterly ruined my life, and I can only hope and pray that he receives a sentence that ruins his.
Jose Ibarra was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In the days following the verdict and sentencing, the decision by the Clark County District Attorney to not seek the death penalty in the case was widely criticized. Georgia State Senator Colton Moore called on the Attorney General, Chris Carr, to file an emergency motion to intervene and demand the death penalty be applied. After a sentence has already been imposed, however, there does not appear to be a legal means for it to be increased. That was the tragic case of Laken Hope Riley. Thank you for joining me, and a special thanks to Porterin, Adina Elena Cindia, Felicia Told You So, and Joe Weaver for joining our Members Lounge. I'm Kevin, this is Just Thought Lounge, and I'll see you in the next one.
Let me find my seat. Kevin, go ahead and settle in. Gotta be selective, doing all the research, keeping it objective. Always been effective, can say he got a knack. Pick of the litter, you see how Newton got his back. Yeah, the content that you need, this could be a new sign. We talking